You'll have okay. So welcome everybody, which to quite an auspicious time because of everything that is going on. And no matter how you are, in your head, in your heart, in your body, you are all welcome. And as a reminder, everything is an invitation. Today, especially the exercise that I have planned for us, will likely bring up some emotion. And what I'd like to encourage you to do is to stay curious and compassionate. So notice if anything comes up and handle it like you would, I guess, a young child discovering something for the first time with a little bit of curiosity. And we will finish within the hour. I wanted to keep today punchy because of exactly what I just said. There's so many things going on already. Two of you were saying that you may need to leave early. So we will finish by then. If after the session you would like to reach out to me, if something comes up and you feel like you want to discuss it any further, please simply send me an email or a message on any platform that we're connected on. And I'm around in order for us to do that. The objective, the aim for today is threefold. To look back on the year, because when we look back, we not only honor things that have happened, no matter how we label them, good, bad, neutral, but we also are better able to let things go if we'd like to. So we're going to look back, and I'll guide us through an exercise to do that. And then we're going to look inward, which is an opportunity to connect with ourselves and to integrate. Because in our busy lives, welcome to those that are joining us now. We've just started. In our busy lives, we can forget sometimes to pause and stop. So the next 55 minutes is an integration for you. It's a beautiful gift that you're giving yourself to take stock of what's happened and where you are. And then thirdly, when we do that properly, when we look at the past and we honor it and we acknowledge and maybe we choose what we want to let go and what we want to take with and we integrate for a moment, we can better look forward. So we're going to look back, look inward, and then look forward so that when the new year comes, yeah, it sounds good, right? When the new year comes, hopefully you have a little bit more clarity and enthusiasm and energy, because goodness knows we need energy at this incredibly roller coaster adventurous time of our lives that we all find ourselves in. Yeah, yeah. So on that note, there's a lot. And I don't want you to feel at all overwhelmed. So how about we start with connecting with ourselves, because that's the most important thing. And there's many ways to do that. But the one way that I find always works for me, regardless of where I am, on a Zoom call, as a host, or as a participant, is to remember that I can actually breathe. So how is your breath in this moment? I mean, of course you were breathing because thank goodness the autonomic nervous system controls that. But how is your breath? Because your breath is an indication of your emotional state. It also helps us understand what's happening with our nervous system. And for most of us, I'm looking at the faces on the screen. It's the end of the day. I know, Stuart, for you, it's mid-morning. But already a lot of us have probably been stressed today. I mean, just the fact, Jenny, that you discovered that AWS was down could have caused some stress. So what I'd like you to do is, in your own time, take 3 deep, nourishing breaths, and as deeply as you'd like to, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. So breathe in through your nose. If you can, breathe a little bit deeper into your belly than you were breathing. And as you exhale, allow yourself maybe to let go of something that was maybe irritating you a few moments ago that you don't want to carry into the next hour. So those that joined us a little bit late, just to give you context, we will finish by the hour. And it will be very helpful if you do have pen and paper handy. You may already have taken your second breath. If you haven't already done so, breathe deeply in through your nose. This is an opportunity for some mindfulness, but also bodyfulness, to connect both the mind and the body. And as you exhale, drop your shoulders a little bit more towards the ground. Maybe loosen your jaw. Maybe allow your hands to feel a little heavier and sink into the place that you're in to really arrive here. And then take one last deep breath in through your nose. And hold the breath for a moment or two if you can, and then exhale. we're going to have an opportunity to do a mindful breath exercise like that another 3 times before we say goodbye today. Just because I know the pace that we're traveling in at the moment can make it quite easy for our heads to be anxious about the future and worrying about the past and so busy with everything else that we don't often take a moment to just connect with our breath, our heart and our body, and what a gift it is to when we do that, because it helps us to identify what's happening within us. That way we can faster process emotions, and we make less errors, and we lower our blood pressure, and our digestion kicks in more better, and all round it's soothing for the nervous system, which is very necessary after all the stress that we've had after a very long, not just 1 year, but almost 2 years. Right. So, have you got pen and paper? Okay, great. And with this exercise that we're going to do, and I'm just going to repeat because 2 or 3 of you weren't on the call, it may bring up emotions. If you notice an emotion come up, don't suppress it, because you may have heard me say this before, what you suppress, the body will express. So we don't want to suppress it. But we're also going to go through quite a lot today. So this isn't a time perhaps to let the emotion come through and be expressed, but hold it with curiosity and compassion. I sometimes say to myself the words, how interesting, or how fascinating, when something comes up. And that helps me to stay curious about it. And continue, I'll remind you, but I'd like you to notice your breath and how your body feels as we go through this exercise. You might notice that you start to hold your breath potentially. So I'll nudge you every now and again to take slow, deep breaths. And as I mentioned, I'm also around if you'd like to reach out to me after today. So what we're going to do is, ideally, you need 2 pieces of paper to do this on, because we're going to do 2 separate exercises. And what I'd like you to do is put a heading. I use this heading on 1 piece of paper. What sucks? You could put what's bad, what's negative, or just a down smiley, a down face. But the idea is that it's a heading that reflects on the not so good stuff. And then I'd like you to create 4 blocks on the piece of paper. So divide it into quarters. And then on another piece of paper, I'd like you to write the heading, what's great, or perhaps you could use words like what's positive, what's been easy, or a big smiley face. But you get the idea. We're expressing negative and positive, and then both sheets of paper to be divided into 4. And in preparation, I'm going to play you a short version of a song that's going to set the tone for the exercise that we're going to do.
There are 3 things I do when my life falls apart.
Do you know the song?
Number 1, I cry my eyes out and dry up my heart. Not until I do this will my new life start. So that's the first thing that I do when my life falls apart.
I'll put the song into the chat in case you're interested.
The second thing I do is I close both of my eyes and say my thank yous to each and every moment of my life. I go where I know the love is and let it fill me up inside. Gathering new strength from sorrow, I'm glad to be alive. And things are looking up. I know above the clouds the sun is shining.
Okay, so 3 things is firstly to cry. Well, hopefully we're not going to cry too much on this call. We may giggle and laugh. But the idea is to recognize emotions, and all of them are welcome. In fact, if we don't cry, it's hard for us to really appreciate happiness. If we don't get angry, we potentially hold on to resentment. So it's important to be able to feel all the emotions. And And then the second thing he mentioned was to express gratitude and then to start over again. So that's part of the exercise that we're going to do now, is we're going to look at maybe some of the things that could have made us cry. We're going to look at the things that made us feel grateful and happy. And then we're going to use a technique in order to start over again. So let's start. If I ask you to cast your attention or your mind back to the beginning of the year, which was January, February, and March. So those first 3 months, it may be helpful. I don't think, is there anybody from the Southern Hemisphere on the call? No, I think we're all in the Northern Hemisphere, which means we were in winter. So what I'd like you to do is, starting with the page that has the heading, what sucks, what was negative, I'd like you to, without judgment, anything small, medium, large that comes up around that time that was difficult for you, to write that down free flow in the top left corner of your page. So for instance, for me, when I think back to the beginning of the year in winter, it was my first full winter in the Northern Hemisphere. I definitely had a little bit of seasonal affective disorder. I was quite miserable by the end of January, struggling to sleep, very tearful, and I had night sweats for the first time in my life for a whole week. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I've got menopause and depression. And lockdown was in full swing. And it was a very difficult time. Very difficult time. Another thing that happened was my trip to South Africa was cancelled again, 3 days before the flight was meant to take off. I remember that was the trigger for the night sweats. I remember feeling quite isolated. I missed salsa dancing a lot by then because I hadn't danced for a whole year. Something that was also challenging for me in the winter was, as much as I love food, you all know that I'm quite a foodie, I was struggling to cook for one. I remember that. So those were a few things that came up for me. What comes up for you? I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. I'm going to play soft music, and anything that comes up around January, February, March. So think back to winter. What are things that came up that were not great, that you would put in the column under what sucks, or what was not great, or what was negative, or what was challenging? Felicia and Melissa, if you've just joined us, we're reflecting on the beginning of the year and what was difficult in the first 3 months of the year. So if you think back to, how did you feel physically? How were you emotionally and mentally? Were there some situations or events that were difficult? And we're writing them down without allowing too much of the emotion to come up. We're acknowledging the content and the context at this point. And we've got another minute or so to do that. If anybody has any questions, please feel free just to unmute yourself or pop a question into the chat. If you're finding it difficult to remember things, it may help to remember where you were, and also just to sit with the emptiness. If that's what's coming up, that's also absolutely okay. Notice your breathing, and take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth at any time. Inspiration and inspiring can often help with ideas, memory, with igniting oxygen into our bloodstream and our brain. So the breath is very powerful. Okay. Right. Everybody okay? Can we move on from that? I see some yawns. Do you know that when you yawn, it could be an indication that your subconscious mind is working and integrating and processing? Whenever I go for coaching or therapy, my therapists and coaches have always said, because when you yawn in a therapy session or if you're with somebody, you feel embarrassed because we always assume it's got to do with boredom. And they always say, no, don't hold back the yawn. It's your subconscious is taking in what we're talking about. So please don't feel self-conscious at all if you feel a yawn coming on. It can also be triggered by the deep breathing, especially if you've been sitting behind a screen all day and not moving much. When you start breathing, your body could be craving more of that oxygen. Yeah, it's a good thing. So now what I'd like us to do is take the piece of paper that says what's great, and in the top left corner, thinking back to January, February, and March, I'd like you now to write down anything, no matter how small, of what you would say made you smile, what felt positive, what you're grateful for. For instance, for me, I moved into a new home because of COVID. And so I was closer to nature. And even though those months were difficult because of the winter, on days where I was able to go for walks, it was wonderful not to have to drive to go find a park, but to be able to just walk. Because my health gave me such a shock, I discovered tests, like this one test called the Dutch test, which I'd never known about, that takes a look at your hormones and gave me incredible insights. In fact, I was not entering menopause just yet. It was probably just the shock and the long-term stress from the months before. I also invested in a proper light to help with UV light exposure and the habit of getting out first thing in the morning to help with my circadian rhythm, which I don't think I would have done if I didn't speak to somebody about the fact that I was feeling quite down. What else I wrote? Oh, yes. I decided to commit to a weekly Mindful Chef box. So because I was tired of cooking, I decided, well, I'm going to get one of those boxes that arrive each week with the recipe in it and treat myself. And I've kept it going almost every week since then. I find that I actually waste less food now, and I get such inspiration from the recipes. So that was a good thing that I did. So what are things that happened for you in the winter of this year, in the beginning of the year, that made you smile, that were good, that made you feel grateful? And thank you, Stuart and Jenny, for sharing in the chat about, that horses, when they yawn, it's an indication that they're relaxing. You always want to be around relaxed horses, that's for sure. They're so intuitive. They're beautiful creatures. And an old meaning for inspiration is inhale. Yeah, exactly. So take a moment to reflect on anything good. What was positive? What made you smile during January, February, and March? If any of you celebrate Valentine's Day, that would have been the 14th of February. Maybe there were some friends or family that had birthdays or other milestones. Lockdown eased in the UK in March. I actually discovered online salsa dancing in February after telling a friend that I was really missing it. I had no idea that you could learn salsa online. It wasn't quite the same as being in a room with people, but at least I got to experience a little bit of that vibe. And once again, if you find your mind's like getting stuck or feeling empty, you can always close your eyes and take a deep breath in to inspire to bring in air, to bring in ideas, to activate your bloodstream, your brain. And as you exhale, give yourself permission to remember anything good or positive or anything that sparked joy during the beginning of the year. Sometimes it even helps to look at what was negative, and now that you've got some distance from it, to potentially see if something good came of it. Like my getting a bit ill led to me finding out about this test that I've now told lots of people about. One more minute. And I invite you to put your pen down, and before we move into the next season of the year, which is spring, let's just let that integrate, because there could have been a lot of things that happened, be them good or bad or both. And here's an opportunity to let the intelligence of the body, our inner wisdom, our intuition, let some of that integrate. So if you're comfortable to do so, soften your gaze, and we're going to do a 1 minute mindful exercise. If you're comfortable, you can even close your eyes. Bring your awareness to your chest, to where your heart is beating behind your sternum. And notice your breath. And allow yourself, as you breathe in, to breathe in more of what was good, what made you smile during that time, of any positivity that you felt that loved ones could have been feeling around you or anybody else on this call. And as you exhale, to give yourself permission to release what was not good, what sucked, what was hard, what was challenging. Knowing that it's not always easy to let go of these things, but it starts with becoming aware of them and then acknowledging them, accepting, and giving ourselves permission to let them go. So take a deep breath in, allowing yourself to breathe in more of what was good, what made you smile, what brought on gratitude. And as you exhale, to release what was negative, what was hard, what was challenging. And one more deep breath in. And as you exhale, notice if you can release any physical tension around your jaw and your neck. Let your shoulders drop towards the ground. Allow your body to feel heavy without losing your posture. And if your eyes are closed, to slowly open them and let the light back in from the screen. And now I'd like us to move into the second season of the year, which for those of us, all in the Northern Hemisphere, would have been spring. So if you cast your mind back, and I know this can feel like a long time ago because so much changes so quickly, in April, May and June, what was happening for you? So for instance, I made a few notes here. And the more I wrote, the more actually came up. So what was difficult, because we're going to start with what sucks in the top right-hand corner, or whichever corner you'd like to move to. I was starting to get quite tired, especially in June, because I had so much online work. And online work is not the same as in-the-room work. It's quite two-dimensional. And it's tiring, especially when you do back-to-back presentations. And I was starting to feel that. Yeah, I remember my eyes. I noticed that my eyes were struggling and I started getting headaches again, even though I wasn't clenching my jaw as much. I missed my mom's birthday for the second time. Both my parents got sick. That was very hard because I completely catastrophized about what that would mean. And my parents live in South Africa. So, yeah, those were a few things that stood out for me. And travel wasn't easy. I remember, we were starting to kind of get back into sometimes meeting, and it wasn't simple. So take 2 minutes and reflect on your April, May, and June. How are you feeling physically? That's a good place to start. How are you feeling in terms of your energy levels, your health? How are you feeling emotionally? How are your relationships? Was there challenges around maybe your mental health? Were there also some milestones that you might have missed that were important to you? Or some other life changes? And remember to keep breathing slowly and deeply, and to mark them down, whatever might come up, and to let it flow through you onto the paper. One more minute. Roxine, I know that you mentioned that you might need to leave. If you need to, please look out for the recording or message me, because I'd love you to see how the exercise gets wrapped up. Wonderful. And now what I'd like you to do is pick up the sheet of paper about what's great and put a smile on your face, because often turning up the corners of our mouths can shift our emotions quite quickly. And I'd like you to think back on that time, April, May, and June. What happened that made you smile? What happened that was good, that was maybe a surprise? Even though I missed my mom's birthday, I managed to get flowers delivered to her by a friend of mine that again arrived as I was on the phone to my mom, unplanned, which was just a delightful coincidence. I did the well-being immersion, which some of you I know attended, that 1 week of half an hour, which was just, I think I enjoyed that the most out of everybody. And I'll definitely be doing that again in 2022. Oh, I started cold water swimming because one of my friends challenged me, and I live close to a place called Frensham Ponds. And I would never have thought of swimming in an open lake, but I did 50 swims because we actually created a challenge in July, the month after. And that started because of that. Oh yes, and something else that I actually would not have remembered if I didn't do this exercise, because I couldn't go on holiday anywhere. I discovered Wales twice. I went to Ross on Wye and just outside of Monmouth, and I did kayaking on the River Wye, which I had never done before. So, and I discovered the Brecon Beacons and climbed up Penny Farn. Yeah, which was it's such a beautiful place, and I don't think I would have gone if I hadn't had another trip to France cancelled. So out of the cancellations that were very upsetting at the time, when I look back, I was able to do something quite magical. So what happened for you that made you smile? Maybe you learned something. Maybe you did something differently. And take a moment to let that flood through you onto the paper. Remembering to smile while you do that, because it can help you to actually bring on that emotion of gratitude or happiness or some joy. I won't talk about the weather in April if I remember. It wasn't that great here in the UK. We had about 3 weeks of like non-stop rain. But the summer was good. There were some beautiful long hot days. Another half a minute or so, and then we're going to move into summer, the middle of the year. So now if you think about, after spring comes summer, July, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, of course, I know a lot of people in South Africa, so it would be the other way around, it would be the colder months. July, August, September. Going back to what was challenging, upsetting, stressful, what sucked, what was not cool. A few things that came up for me. Oh yeah, it was my birthday. And my trip to Paris got cancelled. There's a pattern there. Oh my gosh. I was really tired at the end of August. I worked a lot. I remember feeling like I was on the edges of my own burnout, which was interesting. The teacher, I teach about these things, having to really take a close look at what I was doing. Missed my dad's birthday, and I remember on my dad's birthday, it was the 14th of July, there was an announcement in the UK that 2 major retailers were going to let go of 1,000 jobs each. And I remember my heart just cracking open for what that meant for families. That was hard. And then also, I had a little bit, somebody who's very close to me in the family, we didn't agree eye to eye on the stand with the vaccine. And that was really hard for me. I remember that. And for him. So if you think back to your summer, July, August, September, what was difficult? What was difficult for you at that time? And let's take a moment to reflect on that. And once again, notice your breathing as you're doing this exercise. Can you and are you still breathing deeply and slowly? Could you deepen your inhale a little bit? And as you exhale, release tension that might have accumulated in your shoulders and neck, around your jaw. And then while you're thinking about summer, July, August, September, what was good? So populate some things that flowed. Like my birthday was great after all, even though I didn't get to do what I wanted to do, which was go see my family and friends in Paris. And I designed a whole new Beyond Burnout workshop because of my own experience. So that was something good that came out of my own experience with it. And I did that 50 swim challenge that I spoke about, because some friends of mine had put on weight and they were struggling to exercise, so we all chose to do something and do it 50 times, and we gave ourselves 3 months to do that. And mine was the swims. I have not swum in Frensham Pond since then, but I'm sure if I did a chart and tracked it, I would probably do it again. So what was good? What made you smile during those months, July, August, September? Just under a minute before we move into the last part of the year. And then if we think of October, November to now, current, where we have 9 days, I think it is, before Christmas Eve. What's been difficult over the past 2 to 2.5 months? The new variant, no doubt, might have caused a lot of strain. I had a very difficult weekend with a lot of my South African friends being affected with the immediate ban. I was very grateful that I managed to listen to my intuition and I got to South Africa for 1 week, even though it cost a lot of money and I only had a week that I could go. I managed to go before South Africa was back on the red list. So that was a negative that became a positive. What's negative, sucks, is that 2 days ago my Christmas plans to be in France, in Champagne, with my family have been cancelled again. But now I have wonderful friends in Devon who I'll be with. So, yeah. So what's been difficult? What has sucked? What has been challenging over the recent few weeks? If any of you read my blog, you might have seen my experience with the clinic, who were not very friendly about a PCR test. That was difficult. And that's where I learned sometimes you have to choose not to fight, even if you are right. What's been challenging or difficult recently? And what's been good recently? What's good is, as I mentioned, even though for 2 days I wasn't sure what I'd be doing for Christmas, I've now got some very lovely plans in place. I'm very excited about being able to slow down because the whole world seems to come to a bit of a slower pace at this time of year. My dad is on WhatsApp for the first time ever, thanks to that 1 week that I was able to set him up on a smartphone. At the age of 75, he was so patient. That is very good for me. Every time I get a WhatsApp from him, I'm very happy. So what's making you smile at the moment? What's positive? What's good? One more minute. So, we've gone through the whole year, and now I'm going to pull this together. But firstly, I'd like to give you permission to stand and move, because we've done a lot of thinking, and going and shifting from negative to positive can be quite tiring for the body. So take a minute as I play a little bit of some more Jason Mars, and stand up and stretch. Allow yourself
who will set your
yawn if you'd like to, and
It
stretch.
always seems impossible.
Maybe shake your body a bit. Shake off those feelings.
Look for the good in everyone.
Have a sip of water if you
People
have
done
any.
gone crazy. People done gone mad.
And take another and
People
take
done
it.
forgot the superpowers we all have.
You do have superpowers.
Love, not hate. We
Absolutely.
can decide our fate and look for the good in everyone and celebrate.
And take a deep breath. Bring on a yawn if you'd like. By the way, when I did this exercise last year, what I did was, actually, I'll share that with you in a moment. I think what I'd like to first do is give us an opportunity to connect for a few minutes in smaller groups. And the question I'd like you to do is, if you reflect on what was difficult, so the sheet of paper where you wrote down what sucked, what was challenging, what was not making you happy, I'd like you to pick one situation that's about a 5 out of 10. So not the most stressful thing, something that was, 5 or less out of 10 in terms of being negative or stressful. And then I invite you to, without sharing the content or the context of the situation, when we go into the breakout rooms, is to reflect on, if you look back on that situation. So it might be helpful if it's something that has passed, not something that's maybe happening today. Although even if you ask yourself this question, you can do it for a current situation, but it may be easier if it's something that has happened in the past. What did that situation show you about what you truly desire and who you truly want to be? So an example for me was, I spoke about when I managed to book 1 week to go to South Africa, and I went for a PCR test, and then 2 days before my flight, 48 hours before, I realized it was the wrong test. And I wasn't in the wrong. The clinic was in the wrong. So I could have fought with them, but fighting with them still meant I would have missed my flight. And that means we all lose. They lose, I lose, everyone loses, my parents lose. So I just went for another emergency rapid PCR test. Sure, it cost me another 100 quid, but I got my flight. I got onto the flight. So what that experience taught me, it was a very difficult 48 hours, but it showed me that even though I know I'm right, I don't have to create conflict. And it showed me, as a person, I want to be a daughter that can be there for her parents. And they mattered to me. So on reflection, it was actually, I was like, I can let that go. And even though it cost money and it was quite a bit of stress at the time, it showed me that I don't want to have conflict. I also like to be treated fairly, and that I want to be a good daughter. So we're going to go into breakout rooms for about 4 minutes. So allow, and if you don't want to share, you don't need to. You're also welcome to stay here with me. But I'd like you to reflect on one situation in the past year, and on the question, what did the situation show you about what you truly desire about yourself or in life, or the kind of person that you'd like to be? Is that clear? Great. Okay. There we go. You should have a request to join a breakout room. Welcome back, ladies. Hi. The others were both groups of 3, so I can see why they're taking a bit longer. They'll be forced out if they don't eject themselves. There we go. Welcome back, Jenny. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Would anybody like to share their own experience? So not something that you heard, not the content of the actual situation, but the thing that you discovered about yourself, about what you truly desire or who you truly want to be and show up as a person. Is anybody happy to share that? Because there's always wisdom in the collective, and you can either do that in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Stuart and Paula, sure.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
You go first, Stuart. That's fine.
Stuart, yeah.
Okay. Well, if you wanted a macro thing without getting into the details, what I was saying in the breakout room, just to expand on that, I discovered through the pandemic, the lockdowns, the masking, the uncertainties, the frustrations. What's really important to me is not the small things, but I'm tired of being miserable. Let's put it that way. And I did rediscover, or maybe discover that during this time I was surprisingly drawn to religion, and I've never been a super observant person, but I started thinking of these existential things about God, and attending virtual services, and discovering music in relation to religion and outside of religion as well.
Yeah.
And those kind of things help me, and just thinking about what's important in life, the macro issues of enjoying yourself, having good health, being with people as opposed to being isolated, being alive, being thankful that you're alive and healthy. Those things are far more important than being ticked off about some bad day at work.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for that very, one vulnerable, open, and I get this feeling of a rich mosaic of what you've have discovered, are discovering. Thank you. Paula, what did you discover about yourself?
Well, mine's quite short and sweet, really, but basically to accept there are certain things that you can't change. And you just have to accept them, that they're out of your control.
Yes.
And to make the best of a bad situation. So to stay strong and to find something to laugh at in everything, So
yeah.
Sort of.
And that's not always easy, but it actually is always possible.
Yeah. See the light in the dark situation, if you like. It's probably a better way of describing it.
Yeah. Thank you, Paula. So that, for me, tells me that you learned a bit about your inner enthusiast and ability to be optimistic.
Yeah.
So I'm not sitting with each of you one-on-one and personally. So I don't know how many things you have on your chart about what was difficult and what sucked. But what I did when I did this exercise a year ago, and I'm doing it again, that's why I thought about it, is I wrote down all the different positive things on Post-it notes, and I stuck them onto a big piece of paper called What's Great. And I did the same for what sucked, what was hard and difficult and challenging. And I stuck those onto a large piece of paper. And then I actually burnt each of the negative pieces of paper. I did that safely where I could. But what I'd like you to do is, so I no longer have what sucks, but I have this from a year ago about what was great. And I'm glad I kept it because I needed to reflect on it. earlier this month, and I'm going to do the exercise again. What I'd like you to do, though, is perhaps next week, Tuesday, is the 21st of December. So it's the solstice. So after that, in the Northern Hemisphere, the days will get longer. There's a shift in time and seasons. I would like you to take your sheet of paper where you've written down what was difficult or negative or challenging about this past year. And sometime before the end of the year, perhaps on the 21st, on the solstice, because it's quite a significant day in terms of nature and the seasons, is to tear up the paper, to maybe rewrite all of those onto individual pieces of paper and tear them up individually, or burn them if you have a fireplace and it's safe for you to do that. But I'd like you to physically do something that gives you permission to release it, to soften it. You may not totally get rid of the emotion attached to each thing, but it's a powerful declaration when you say, I'm letting go of this. I'm moving now into a new year without that much of the heaviness of what wasn't good. And then the things that you have written down on what's great, keep them somewhere. Maybe put them at the back of your wardrobe cupboard or in your bathroom against the wall or somewhere where you can reflect on what's been good about this year. Because I actually rolled it up and put it away, which I'm grateful I didn't throw it away, because going through it, I was like, there's a lot of good that happened last year. And I'm going to do this exact exercise that I've just done with you. Well, I already did most of it today when I was preparing, but I'm going to do it in the same way so that I keep what's great. And on Tuesday, on the 21st, on the solstice, whenever you're able to, is release it. Let it go. You know, I'm not going to start singing. I don't have that kind of voice. But if I were to sing a song, what would the song be in this moment? Oh, I should have had that lined up. Elsa, right? Yeah.
It's the Frozen, isn't it?
The Frozen song, Let It Go. Yes. Yes, yes. And of course, there are many other ways to let things go. And this is an ongoing, we don't arrive in terms of our well-being, like, and I'm not suggesting that we're always happy, but I am suggesting is we choose not to dwell in the dark, like Paula, you just said, and hold on to the negative things only, to also hold on to the good things. And when possible, to let go of the tension that the difficult things can hold on us. And one thing that helps me is to ask myself, what have the difficult things, or what is this difficult thing teaching me about what I want and who I am? I actually believe if you ask yourself that question all the time, you'll always, as Paula mentioned, be able to find something good or meaningful about the experience that you're going through. So I want to thank you for being here and being curious and compassionate with yourselves and sharing with each other. And I hope that by doing this exercise, even on a subconscious level, you're able to soften and lighten the load as we go through the last 2 weeks or so of 2021. Without wishing it away too fast, there's still many good things that can happen that can make you smile between now and the new year. And let's start the new year with a little bit more clarity and lightness and calm in our hearts, be that through music or poetry or faith or questions or looking for what's optimistic. And I look very forward to seeing you all in January. I think we'll be having the masterclass on Wednesday the 19th, but I'll send out a notification about that. And anybody can reach out to me at any time between now and then. So as I say goodbye, let's leave on this note. Thank you for gifting yourself this time. Stuart, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
For everybody else, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you, Emma.
You still have to find it, find it, find it.
Bye, Lorna. Bye, Emma.
Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been lovely. Thanks very much.
Yeah, short and sweet and punchy. It's exactly what I feel like we all needed. So thank you.
Absolutely. No,
here.
such a good idea.
Yeah.
We all found it quite, I think, quite difficult to remember. I mean, I had to look on my calendar to go off and get my calendar. 'Cause
Oh,
I
I
couldn't
should have
remember.
mentioned. Yes, I did that when I was preparing yesterday and today. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Doesn't that show you how, yeah, we lose the good and the bad? And
definitely. I
yeah,
couldn't
it's
remember anything, but I know Jenny, she had problems remembering the bad stuff. So
I found it much easier to remember the good stuff than the bad
that's wonderful.
until the last quarter.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
fresh.
definitely
Yeah.
overtaken the good.
Yeah. It's important. I think we rush through our lives too much. Like already, people, we're doing Christmas and then it's New Year, and then before we know it, it's going to be, everyone's going to be wishing winter over. And yeah, the pace of life just gets faster and faster. And these small little rituals that we do for ourselves, even if you just commit to doing this once a year, acknowledge the
Completely.
milestones, choose what you want to carry into the next year and let go of what you can be powerful. Yeah.
Mm,
My one of my my very first good thing, I call it rocks and sucks. My first rock this year was you, Celine, and the
Oh,
wellbeing
oh,
class,
brilliant.
because they've really made, and because I missed last month, I missed both the class and the catch up. I didn't realize until today how much my brain has missed it, and I've needed it.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, Claire asked me about you this morning. She
Oh,
said,
did you?
because she apologized because she couldn't be here live. And she's like, please tell me if Jenny's there. I'm worried about her. Yeah.
Must
So you
know.
were missed. You were missed.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for enabling it, and thank you for hosting it. And yeah,
Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Great.
All right.
Well, have a good
Thank
evening,
you.
everyone.
Enjoy your
Take care,
evening,
bye-bye.
everyone.
take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
And have a nice day. Bye. Thanks. Bye.